hat. Is there another one on this side? And this young lady over here with the sign. And you will help us find our questions. Yes, ma'am.
I spoke with you on October 1st briefly when you were at Cedar Falls, and I asked about the Accelerating the End of Breast Cancer Act, and I'm wondering if you've had time to look at that and what your stand is on that.
Yeah, there are now two separate bills on a related issue. Who's the sponsor? Which one is that one?
This would be lead sponsor would be Senator Grassley for the Republican side.
So I think we have signed. If we haven't, we should be. And we can't sign on to a bill until we're actually in session. So I think it's our intention to sign on to that bill as soon as we get back.
Can you co-sponsor?
Yeah, that's what I mean by signing on. I apologize. That's what it means by co-sponsoring. So there's a second bill, but the Grassley bill is one that we've looked at. Our staff has looked through it. Obviously, if Senator Grassley's for it, not just saying it because I'm in Iowa. He's a very serious policymaker. And our intention is to co-sponsor it, but we have to be in session. We're not in session until next week. You can't co-sponsor a bill until, I know it's a Senate rule. As soon as we get into session, we should be co-sponsoring.
So I should count this as a commitment that you will co-sponsor?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah. In fact, I think we've already sent in whatever the paperwork is to his office to have him add us on. Thank you very much. That was easy. Come on, guys. Yes. Well, we're coming for you here. These are the signs over here. We should have plenty of time. Yes, ma'am. All right. Gentleman there.
First of all, thanks for coming to Iowa, Senator Rubio. I'm greatly concerned about something that affects my children and grandchildren, and that's the national debt. Can you give us a rundown as to what you would do to help prevent that catastrophe from happening, of it getting any larger?
Yeah.
To reduce
one of the reasons why Barack Obama is such a catastrophic president is because he has grown the debt more than every president before him combined. We need to deal with what's causing the debt in order to fix it. If you bring the debt under control, you got to deal with what's causing it. Let me tell you what's not causing it. Defense spending is not causing it. Foreign aid is not causing it. It's less than 1% of our budget. What's causing our long-term debt is the way Social Security and Medicare are structured for my generation and for my children. Now, I'm from Florida. This is not well known, but there are a lot of people in Florida on Social Security and Medicare. One of them is my mother. I don't want anything to change for her negatively, and it doesn't have to. We can help balance our budget, and we can save Medicare and Social Security. We don't have to change anything for her. We don't have to disrupt it for her. We don't have to disrupt it for people that are about to retire or people that are already retired. But our next president better tell you the truth. There is no way that Social Security and Medicare works the same for me as it did for her. It either goes bankrupt or we reform it. And the sooner we reform it, the better it's going to be. And what do I mean by reform it? Instead of retiring at 67, I may have to retire at 68. That's not unreasonable. If I've made a lot of money, that means I sold a lot of books. So, now available on paperback if you're interested. If I've made a lot of money and I've been financially successful, my Social Security benefits won't grow as fast as someone who made less money. Medicare could very well be the option of using my Medicare money to buy a private plan that I like better. We somewhat have that already through Medicare Advantage. These are not unreasonable things to ask of my generation, who's 20 years away from retirement, in exchange for not disrupting it for people that are on it now or who are about to retire in the next 10 years. I don't think this is too much to ask, and if we do that, we can save these programs. It'll still be the best program in the world, and we can bring our debt under control. If we don't, it'll continue to grow, and soon we will live in a country where we spend more money servicing the debt than we do on the national defense. And that's what's so irresponsible. And let me just say one more point about the debt. I wish that I could stand here and say it is all the Democrats' fault. This is a bipartisan debt. Both parties have contributed to it, which is one of the reasons why I believe and I support a constitutional convention of the states to put a balanced budget amendment into the Constitution. Congress will never pass that bill. They will never put it on. Because while they claim to be for a balanced budget, they don't like the choices it requires us to make. When I'm President of the United States, I will pull the weight and the attention of the White House behind an effort to allow you to make that decision. Because ultimately, who's making decisions for us? It shouldn't be the federal government in all matters. There is a mechanism that exists to reform the Constitution, to do what we need to be doing, and we will, not just term limits on Congress and the judiciary, but a balanced budget amendment.
Thank you for being here today, Senator Rubio. I have a foreign policy question.
Yes.
In the war on ISIS, some of the best our most effective, fighting forces on the ground have been the Kurdish forces in northern Syria and northern Iraq, while at the same time our NATO ally Turkey has been aggressively responding to Kurdish civilians in southeast Turkey. If the prospect of Kurdish independence arose, how would the Rubio administration respond to that?
Well, a couple points. Number one is the reason why you feel so insecure about our strategy towards ISIS is because Barack Obama doesn't have one. And unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, on Sunday night, he went on national television, spoke to the American people, and I wish he hadn't. Because he basically said, everything's going great. We've had a few hiccups, but I'm going to keep the same strategy. And of course, people feel less secure than ever before. You are right to say the Kurdish forces, who by themselves, by the way, there is not a tremendous amount of unity among them. There are conflicting groups even within the Kurdish groups, have been very effective. But they've been very effective at doing what they do best, which is protecting Kurdish areas. And we should be of assistance to them in that regard. They are very capable fighters, and they have shown the ability to defeat ISIS and others when the areas that they live in are threatened. And I want to help them 100%. The broader problem, though, is that ISIS is not just in the Kurdish areas. They are primarily in Sunni areas. And the Kurds do not want to and cannot liberate and hold Sunni areas. Which is why what we need in order to solve this problem is a broader coalition made up primarily of Sunni Arab forces on the ground. That means Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Jordan and others need to provide troops. And we'll provide some special operations forces and more airstrikes and logistical support. But these Sunni areas can only be liberated and ultimately held in a stable way by Sunnis themselves. And that's not happening because this president has no strategy. And on the issue of Kurdish independence, it's a complex issue. Because I think there are significant doubts about whether Syria and Iraq will ever again be unified countries in the way we thought about them in the past. Especially when you have a government in Baghdad, run by Shia, have no interest in sharing power with the Kurds or sharing power with others. And in the Kurdish groups, there are a number of groups that we work with very closely, and then there are a number of groups that, quite frankly, there's at least one in particular that's been labeled a terrorist group, that we label as a terrorist group, and that our allies in Turkey are very uncomfortable. So I would not make hard commitments on independence for Turkish groups right away, but I do think they deserve the right of more self-determination. It is the only way you're ever going to be able to hold together what we once knew to be Iraq before ISIS blew it apart. And I think in Syria as well. The Kurds that live in Syria deserve an opportunity at some level of autonomy and self-determination. But we really can't even begin that process until we eradicate this dangerous group called ISIS. A group that has an apocalyptic vision of the future. They're not just going to go away on their own. Either they win or we win, and we need to defeat them militarily. We need to help the Sunni Arabs defeat them militarily, and when I'm president, we will.
Reestablish America as a technology leader here in developing, and also how we keep ourselves safe, national security technology-wise, from hacks and other attacks like that.
Well, when you said technology, I thought you were going to say what I was worried about 48 hours ago, which is how to get that PlayStation to work for my kids. The new one, I can't figure out how that whole thing, or that hoverboard that they got, which I cannot. You guys know what I'm talking about? These little hoverboards. I can't ride the thing. Can you guys, anybody here know how to ride one? I don't think it's made for adults. My kids learn it in a few minutes. Absolutely. We are the most innovative people in the world. And I want us to continue to lead the world in the development of cutting-edge technologies. There are a couple things holding us back from it. Number one, believe it or not, and a lot of people don't associate this with technology and technological advances, is regulation. And the reason why regulation stands in the way is that big government has always been used by established industries to keep new competitors from coming up. They know that a small or startup company can't deal with a mountain of regulations, so they support them. It keeps them out. And that's why I believe we need to roll back regulations and cap them so that it doesn't stand in the way of innovation. The second thing is the tax code. We have a tax code that encourages companies to leave the United States. We basically tell you, if you stay here and you do business here and you're headquartered in America, you're going to pay more taxes than you pay in Canada or Ireland or virtually any other developed country. So you are basically inviting them to leave, and that's why tax reform, especially on the business side, is so important. The third is making higher education more accessible. In particular, higher education and jobs that technology demand, because those are where the jobs are going to be created in the 21st century. We have an outdated higher education system. It is no longer enough to have a college degree. It's got to be the right degree. And what breaks my heart is people are borrowing thousands of dollars for a degree that doesn't lead to a job. So one of the things I want students to have is that before you take out a loan, you should be told how much people make. when they graduate from that school with that degree. What that means is you're probably going to have a lot more people going in the technical fields and a lot less people majoring in Roman philosophy. But that's the 21st century. The market for Roman philosophers has dramatically tightened over the last 2 decades. The other is competency-based learning. There's an extraordinary amount of learning now available on something called the internet, which Al Gore invented about 20 years ago. And what it means is that today you have more information available than ever before, and we are charging people to sit in a classroom and learn what they could have learned on their own, or what they might have learned through years of life experience or work experience or military experience. When I'm president, we're going to reform our financial aid laws to make competency-based learning even easier. And here's the third thing that people don't associate with technology: vocational training. I have had the opportunity, as I've run for president, to visit a number of manufacturing areas in this country. These manufacturing jobs are also high-tech jobs. You have to have a strong competency in technology to operate some of these 21st century machinery that now is out there. And we are not a country that we stopped doing vocational training about 30 years ago. When I'm president, I'm going to be the vocational education president. And that means you're going to have a lot of people learning skills while they're still in high school. We're going to open up financial aid so they can go to trade schools and vocational learning while they're still in high school, so that when they graduate, they are ready to work in a high-tech factory, in the tech sector, or any other industry that demands their labor. We need to train more people to be airplane mechanics and car technicians and welders, plumbers, pipe fitters. All of these things are dependent upon technology. There are a lot of other areas. I mean, I don't want to take up, there's so much to cover on this, whether it's wireless spectrum that's being crunched in this country, or other things that are protecting intellectual property that the Chinese continue to steal. You invent something, the Chinese hack into your computer, or they reverse engineer it, and you have no protection. There's so much work to be done. But here's what I know: the government's not going to lead the way in technology. The private sector is. We need to make America the best place in the world for us to continue to lead on technology and the jobs that it creates. And I will as president. Yes, sir.
Go you and I.
Yeah, you and I.
Okay, you said you had like $100,000 student loan?
I did. I paid it off with my book.
Okay.
As I said, available on paperback. It makes a great late Christmas present. I'm sorry.
I read in Time magazine that one of the solutions you're suggesting is that you want wealthy benefactors to underwrite the cost of young persons' education in exchange for a percentage of their future salary.
Well, that's not exactly the way I would describe it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm reading from Time magazine.
Oh, well, then it must be true.
Okay. Could you explain?
Yeah, sure.
Is that some kind of indentured servant type thing?
No, of course not. I'll tell you what indentured servitude is.
I have a bonus question.
Oh, bonus question. Okay, good.
Okay. I do like you. But unfortunately, I'm not a Republican. Convince me to switch.
No, we're going to switch them today, right here, right now.
Convince me to switch so I can caucus for you.
Absolutely.
You can switch at the polls, switch at the car.
Okay.
So on the issue you just described, it's not wealthy benefactors and indentured servitude. That's what the left likes to say, because if it doesn't involve the government, it must be bad. And in their mind, anything that doesn't involve the government is bad. Let me tell you what indentured servitude is. I'll describe indentured servitude. You go to school, you or your parents, or both, take out a loan, and that loan will be with you until you pay it off or you die. You go bankrupt, you can discharge every debt, but not the student loan. You graduate from college with a degree, the degree didn't lead to a job, you're still stuck with the loan. That's indentured servitude. Let me tell you what that program is. That program would allow a student, especially a graduate student, to go to an investment group, the way a small company would. And you would convince them that your future is promising. I'm going to graduate and I'm going to be a physicist, the best physicist in the world. And I'm going to invent a lot of great things and lead the way in new technologies and make a lot of money, and they believe in your future. And so they pay your tuition. And in exchange, you pay them back a percentage of your income for a defined number of years. If you make a good living, if you become financially successful, the investment group makes their money back with a profit. And if you don't, they lost their money. Why is that better than a loan? Number one, because it expires at a date certain. Number two, because if it isn't a loan that sits on your credit report and ruins your credit rating. It's not for everyone. Not everyone would qualify for some of these things, but it is a lot better than a student loan. It is a lot better than a student loan. And in fact, Mitch Daniels, the former governor, now the president at Purdue University, wants his school to be the first school that uses this. This is a free market solution to tuition. And it allows a private investment group to pay your tuition in exchange for your percentage. By the way, a student loan is often a much higher percentage of your income than anything that you're ever going to see in one of these arrangements. Because when I graduated from school, my student loans were over $1,000 a month. They were the single largest item on my monthly budget for a very long time. And I assure you, they were a much higher percentage than this would ever be. As far as convincing you to be a Republican. Well, I don't want to convince you just to be a Republican. I want to convince you to be a conservative. And maybe you already are, and you just don't feel the Republican Party speaks to you. Number one, I believe in free enterprise. You want to know why I believe in free enterprise? Because my mother was a housekeeper, as Trey said. My father was a bartender. They never became rich or famous. But the reason why they were able to leave their children better off than themselves is because free enterprise is the only economic model in the history of mankind where poor people can get richer without having to make rich people poorer. It is the only economic model in the world where everybody can be better off without anyone making anyone worse off. It is the only economic model in the history of the world where an employee can become an employer, where a worker can become an owner, and where people that don't want to be rich can still find a good-paying job that allows you to own a home, retire with dignity, and leave all four of your children better off than yourself. This is not a theory. I have 200 years of American history to prove it. And I have something